Good. So I think it's 155, but I'm not going to say what episode it is. So I'll just say, hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And it's been a long time since I've had an actual interviewee. So I am really excited today to have a conversation with Amanda Lurz. And we have gotten to know each other, Amanda, over the last few months because we are in a group together. And I know you have a lot to tell our listeners and me, because you and I are just going to have a conversation about what it means to be real. So first of all, I'd just like to welcome you to Circle Up and Get Real.
Well, thank you. Yes, glad to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Real conversation is the only kind I'm here for. So,
I love that. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. So Amanda lives in South Dakota. I live in North Dakota. We are in a group together with Chris Angel, who lives in Spokane, Washington. So I didn't really ever get to know the people in that group at the beginning. Like we didn't do any get to know you. You were just one of the people in the group. And I don't know, not that long ago, it occurred to me that you live in the state just south of me. And I thought, well, we got to really get to know each other a little bit better. So Amanda, do you want to talk a little bit about your background? I know we have Keller Williams in common. Just tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I am a South Dakota girl, pretty proud of that. I do love where I live. And just kind of as a side note, I thought you lived in Spokane too. And I think the night we figured that out, SDSU and NDSU were playing each other in some sports thing. I'm not a sports thing, you are. I'm not a sports person, excuse me, you are. And so that was just fun that like the night we discovered that we were on the rival sides of that experience. But yeah, so South Dakota girl, very, very proud of that in terms of just, it's been an important part of who I am. It plays big into, of course, how I see the world, and it really plays into my story later on when you look at the cultural aspects of the geographical location, if that makes sense. And so more recently, I guess, so that's sort of my background going way back, but I am a nurse by training. I am a licensed nurse. I am a registered nurse. And I did that for 15 years. So essentially I played what I call the Midwestern girl experience. I got married young. I went to college. I had children and I got a day job, right? And that's what you do. You're a nurse or you're a teacher, or you might be a teller at the bank, and really, speaking into that more kind of what I would say upper Midwestern kind of traditional trajectory. And so during that time of being a nurse, I am just by design a highly spiritual person. And that's just, when I say spiritual, I don't necessarily mean any religion or dogma or doctrine. I just always had what I call a spiritual lens. And so I have always had an ability to look at things as highly connected. Now, I didn't realize that that's not other people's wiring, because that's what I do, because that's how I operate. I thought everyone saw everything really connected. And to kind of illustrate that, an example of what I would say is, if you ever look on the movies or in TV and it's FBI and they're tracking someone, and you'll see this big board where they're putting in, thumbtacks, and there's a string connected to here, and there might be a Post-it note here with a picture of somebody down here. And pretty soon, as the movie goes on, the map is getting more intense.
Yeah.
And so I use that as a visual, because at any given moment, my mind is that completed map. It's all intense. So that plays into what you're witnessing right now, is a highly verbal personality, because if someone asks me a question about Portland, I cannot answer that question without tying in Winnipeg and Houston. The strings are attached. And so I say that because even though I may have had, I'll retract the word may, although I've had shifting frameworks, if you will, for the spirituality, to me, spirituality is those connections. Everything is so connected. And I'll come back to this in just a minute, but essentially where this is going to land is my work in really trying to be clear about that in terms of a mind, body, spirit. But going back to this nursing, what I was seeing is a well-meaning system, and a system that is wrought with fantastic tools and technology and help, if you will. There are these different options. There's help when you're in trouble. But I was also seeing this other side which is more actually the majority of it, which is I saw hurting humans coming in, and we were spending a lot of time imaging, injecting, carving, scoping, and medicating, but we weren't doing a lot of healing. And so I would be in these settings with a hurting human, and I would so badly want to talk to them. And I could see that that the way they were seeing that this is a visual thing in terms of a mindset or a framework, like they're seeing this as X, when if I could just show them that it's Y, then so many of these appointments, so much of this heartache, so much of this challenge would be shifted. But I'm operating in a system that's not designed for that. So I'm watching hurting humans and what I call spiritual pain come in to a setting that is designed to operate on a automobile in a mechanical way. So bring your broken car in this door of the garage, we'll tweak it up with our tools, and then we'll send it out the other way. And it's very mechanical. And so I saw this day in and day out, day in and day out. And so what I would kind of the short way of what I would begin to verbalize was, we're medicating spiritual problems. Once again, spiritual being essence, presence, purpose, how I carry myself in a room. What do I feel more connected to? How can I reframe this to see this as beauty or opportunity? Or how is this a love note from my body? How is it a help cry? Because it wants to serve me so badly. So when it gives me this signal, it's this beautiful, loving message. It says, I just need you to shift a little bit. And I often liken it to a baby, where a baby just cries. It just cries. And so then we start saying, oh, is it hungry? Does it need help? Does it have a wet diaper? Does it have a rash? Does it have a tummy ache? But it has one language. It cries. And so our body shows up with these aches and pains. And so that should make us very curious. That should be the signal. It has a need. And so this is beautiful love. It's this love for us. It wants to perform so well for us. And so I'm seeing this, and I'm growing frustrated with the system. And that doesn't mean that I'm anti-Western medicine or I'm not grateful for the system that we have. It's just when you see the potential that's there. So much potential. We have the best, in my opinion, healthcare system in the world, or if it's not the best, it's certainly up there. And it's so full of potential, but it doesn't want to recognize the spirit. It doesn't want to recognize the emotions and their role in physical health. And through that, I was going through my own journey and experiencing a lot of shifts. And I really, this might seem unrelated, but in the Amanda world, that's impossible.
Everything's related.
You can't even begin to, there's no way. So this will may seem on the surface unrelated, but I was going through my own personal shift in that I was seeing that I didn't think like an employee anymore. My mind was spinning with ideas. If this were my organization, how would it go? This idea of bringing in team, this idea, all of a sudden, I'm just like realizing that I'm coming from a much more creative space, like creative in what would it look like if I built out my own thing? You know, it would be like this and it would be like this. And so many more of my lens and my interrelatedness vision, I could see that it was really playing out like that more and more, that's how I was thinking through things. And maybe I'd always been that way and didn't realize it, because once again, as I said, being an upper Midwest girl, I had actually, and this may not be geographical, but I do link it a little bit to my lived experience, in that I had never been around anything but blue collar working people. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't businesses or anything. Now, this is just coming back to my lived experience. So I didn't even know anyone who owned their own business. I just lived in this sort of experience of having blue collar parents who worked hard, and there wasn't very much left at the end of the month, or if any, and there was a lot of stress, and there was a lot of do it yourself, and there was a lot of what I call, grease wrenching in the garage and fixing things and making it work. And so I almost just didn't know what to do with kind of some of this, like these thoughts. And I don't mean to make that over dramatic or any of that nature. It's just like, you just have a job and you just do your job and you go home, you do what's asked of you and you go home, and that's the end of it. But it was really just finding that didn't fit. There was so much I would do different. If I was calling the shots around here, I'm sure every employee feels that. It would look so different. And one of the things that was really, really hard for me, and might seem trivial to someone else, was that I worked in surgery for many years. I was a surgical nurse. And after a person would come out of surgery, we would give them popsicles, Sprite, Jello. And this might seem like nothing to anybody else. That's what you do. People we need to be careful of their fragile stomach. And I'm about to come out of my skin, because that is sugar, dyes, fake chemicals. And this little thing that would seem unnoticed by most is almost eating me alive inside. I'm like, we are adding insult to injury. We just took you back there. We literally just cut you, literally just sawed you, not to get graphic. It's the reality of what we do, and screwed things back together. And the thing that will cause more inflammation and problem is sugar and dyes. And then we give it to you. And now what have we trained your brain to think? That's what they gave me in the hospital. Wow. And so there's this association that the hospital knows best, when what people don't realize is the lack of interconnectedness in the hospital. What you eat at the hospital is completely reliant on a budget. No doctor or nurse is prescribing that plate for you. And hospital food is a place where budgets can be skinnied down. And so the cheaper we can make the food, right? This isn't an integrated system as much as everyone would like to think. It's a fragmented system that's very compartmentalized, and everyone's vying for the dollar. And so it is bureaucratical in that, rather than working as a joint effort towards healing, it is a whole bunch of fragmented entities vying for power. And so my brain doesn't work like that, because I want everything connected.
Yeah.
And anyway, so there was some restlessness that was happening. And in the meantime, my husband and I had built a home. And when I say built a home, I don't mean we had a home built. I literally mean that we would go to work during the day. We would come home in the evenings. We would go to the job site. We worked till 11:30 at night, from the first scoop of dirt to locking the doors. We built the home, and we had 2 real littles at the time. And as that's unfolding, it's clear that this is in our future. And so more and more unfolding. It did take 2.5 years, because this is nights and weekends with 2 little children. And as this is happening, my husband is getting more and more, and there's more to his backstory that I won't go into, but this has kind of been building up, and we're getting a lot of phone calls. Can you help with this? Can I hire you for this? And the next thing you know, we have an organic business. We didn't know we were going into business. We didn't say, let's get a business plan. We never advertised. Soon enough, we were just very much in the construction business, and more specifically excavation. But I mention that because in all of that, your world changes. You are connecting with new and different people, different ideas, different ways of doing things, and things don't seem as scary anymore. Like you're just around a lot of different people, you've learned a lot. And something that we had spent the couple of years even going into the build of our own home doing was scouring property. You know, we had been all over looking at land, looking at what our specific dream looked like in context of the resources we had available to carry it out. And so in that, we are exploring a lot of different options. And so I always had kind of an interest in homes and property. And then my husband found himself in organic business, and he has a full-time business doing a lot of prep work. So a lot of what he does is what I call the non-glamorous things, the things that go into house building that are expensive, but nobody wants to think about. So while one partner's in picking out the granite countertops, the other one is realizing the estimate for getting power to the site and getting the land to grade and the amount of dirt work and things that are highly unappreciated at a building site, but that will ultimately affect its longevity. Is kind of work we do. So anyway, in all of this, I'm experiencing this unrest. I'm at work and this business unfolding. And so I'm making a lot of new connections and different things. And fast forward, I find myself in real estate. And so, which was great. It was a great fit. And I loved it so much. And I had a lot of, it was wonderful. It was everything it was supposed to be. However, on an even deeper level than that, years preceding me going into real estate, I had started entering into the world of books and teachings and podcasts, kind of before podcasting, before everybody had one. And that was, you know, listening 15 years ago to people talk. And I really was just really what do I want to say? Trans isn't the right word, but transfixed maybe by this world of personal development. And I remember hearing the word coach, and this was years ago. And Jody, I think you can appreciate this because I think you were in the industry.
Yes.
Very early. Yeah. And I remember thinking, and I had my own darkness and shadows that needed to be sorted out. And there was just a lot from my past, from my childhood. There were just things that needed to be sorted out. But I remember thinking to myself, and this is going to sound like a really long time ago, but it wasn't, but it's just going to sound like it, when we didn't have smartphones, like the internet, we weren't Zooming with everybody. And I remember the concept of a coach. And I remember thinking, that's what I want. That's what I want. I want to talk to that person. I don't want to work with a counselor because I can tell you the reasons why I operate like I do. What I want is someone to be like, okay, that happened. So now where do we go from here? And I remember just thinking about it all the time and having zero, and I do mean zero people to have that conversation with. People, and then me just being like Amanda, myself, I'm always in the clouds and spiritual anyway. And so some people just, you know, that can be a bit much for them anyway. And so I just would always think about it. And so honestly, I was looking through the yellow pages. Yes, if you're under 30, you don't know what
there was this book many years ago.
Big book. Yeah, it had all these phone numbers. And I'm looking and like, there's nothing like this. There's counselors, whatever. And I just remember thinking so much, that's who I want that person in my life. And B, I don't think that I had words for this, but it resonated very deeply. Like that's what I saw myself doing. And I also say that I was doing that. I didn't have a title. I was operating as that person to many, many people without knowing that I was anything more than just Amanda and a friend.
Right.
And so when I got into KW and preceding that too, don't get me wrong, in the years preceding that, but it was really personal development heavy, at least in, I don't know if you call it a franchise office, the office that I was in.
The market center.
Market center. There's the term I haven't used for a while. And so during that time, major shifts had occurred, just huge. And I was really in this world of real estate, which was teaching me a ton. And then everybody around me had a coach. There was calls with coaches, and I had already been working with a personal coach that I had hired as I really was feeling the shift on that precipice of, know how I feel about this employee thing anymore. And I'm going to just give a little context around that. I had a government job. And so also this is where the geography does become important in the story, is that where I live in Western South Dakota, it's still relatively rural. You don't have a hospital on every corner. So when you're a nurse, granted, in terms of profession, that's a very versatile one. So in general, I would say more than, say, an elementary school teacher, I would have more job options than them. But the geography becomes important in that we essentially had two hospitals. There was a private hospital, or kind of the regional hospital, if you will, and then there was a VA, a Veterans Affairs Hospital. And really, those are your two employment options. If you're going to be a nurse that's working in a hospital, this is where you're going to work. And so of the two I had, this is what I heard on a weekly basis. Oh, but your benefits. Oh, but your retirement. And I just started to, one of the kind of cues for me as I was, as the universe was really prompting what would be a shift, one of the ways that it spoke to me was like, just like beginning to be really annoyed when I would hear that. I would be so frustrated and angry, and those are too strong words, but they just began to really like kind of rub me wrong.
Yeah.
They weren't untrue. They just seemed so small, so suffocating, so stifling. And I remember saying, people would say, oh, but what about your retirement? What about your retirement? I remember one day saying, there are other ways to build a retirement. But you have, my point is, now you also have a population who in general has grown up, you get a job, you have this very blue collar existence. And so now you have many, many, many voices saying you would leave this job. You would leave this job. But what about the benefits? But what about your retirement? But what about, and you know, looking back, that's a fear lens. And I can understand that if that's all you've known. Something outside of that would seem so, the word that was used is irresponsible.
Yeah.
Why would somebody who, so many people would, aren't you grateful for that job? And so once that move was made, and I was in this world of business, and everybody had a coach, and I had a coach that I had hired that ended up, I was working with that coach as I made the transition out. And let me just clarify, that coach didn't ask me to transition. I had a coach, and it was wonderful to have that person in my court as I made this transition that ultimately the universe was going to make, whether I had a coach or not.
Yeah.
And so then I got into the world of KW, and as I mentioned, was just a very different, everybody was in business. Everybody had a coach. A lot of our calls and training at Market Center would be business coaches or production coaches, or it just was the norm. Everybody knew this world. Yeah. And so as much as I loved real estate and still do in that context, I could just tell that this call that had been planted in my heart many years before, without exposure to any person per se, it was something that was building in me, was now kind of blossoming because it was surrounded by people that spoke its language. It was very nourished. And so I look at real estate as this beautiful opportunity for me. It was exactly what I needed to do, but really, it really just confirmed and like kind of the lotus flower, where I was able to come out in that. And then it was just a perfect segue into coaching. And so I think you've asked me maybe one question and I've talked for 15 minutes.
No, this is great. This is perfect, because here's what I know about listening space. For one thing, when we don't have it, you may be in the middle of somewhere, and anybody listening, wherever you happen to live, if you don't have listening space to be able to speak into, there's no way to get your thoughts out and then hear them. So if you're like me, Amanda, I am a verbal processor. I think you said that early in this conversation. And if you don't have a place to verbally process things and hear them when they come out of your mouth, then you're stuck. And I think you and I both, having been raised in the Dakotas, and understand that we have a whole lot of open space in our two states, a whole lot. And I think between the two of us, our states probably have as many people in them as one suburb of Minneapolis.
So I think maybe between the two of us, maybe 2 million.
Yeah.
in large square miles.
Yes,
Yeah.
large square miles. So we have a lot of open space. We have had a lot of opportunity to think about things. We have also had a lot of opportunity to be programmed in ways that don't want us to think about things. And so when a thinker is born, as you were, and it wasn't your nurture, it doesn't sound like, that had you be different from your parents, because your DNA was a certain way, but you came in different, it sounds like.
Yes.
And you said my mind was connecting things all the time. And I love the visual of the cities on a map with the string between them. And as you were saying that before, I was thinking about the show, The Good Doctor. Have you ever seen that show on TV?
I don't think so.
So The Good Doctor is one of my favorite shows. I don't watch a ton of TV, but there are a couple of shows I really like, and that is one. And he is a doctor, a surgeon who is on the Asperger's spectrum. Sure. And they show how he doesn't really have the greatest social skills, but he's a brilliant surgeon. And they'll take you out of him with the patient and show this web of things happening in his mind. And he can see how things happen. And he'll say, this is what's wrong with this person. And so he solves medical problems using what you would say spiritual awareness and knowledge. And that's why I love that show so much, because it seems exactly like what you're talking about. You also were talking about wellness as opposed to illness. You said we didn't do a lot of healing. Yes. We did a lot of fixing, maybe. And my terminology in fixing, because we seem to think we want to fix people who aren't broken in the first place. But when we fix something, we put it back to the way it was.
Yes.
Right? You fix a chair, the leg breaks, you put it back to the way it was. And if we're doing that with humans, then we're sending them back out into their lives the way they were, and not the way they could be, which is what I'm hearing you say. There's more to it than our biology.
Yes.
And you and I have shared a lot of similar experiences in our states, and our Keller Williams experience, and our awareness of coaching, and all of those kinds of things, which is why it's been fascinating to just listen to your story. But lately, the couple of things that we've done the most recently are this event we had in Fargo, where you came to the Chill Out event, and also the book Outwitting the Devil.
Yes.
So if anybody hasn't heard of that book, you said you've read Think and Grow Rich as well. How did you get connected with Napoleon Hill?
I don't know that I have like a linear answer.
Okay.
I'll give the Amanda answer, is that to me, the universe is always working. And so things will happen. And for whatever reason, I was supposed to have that book in my hands. I don't know that it was any one specific thing I could point to. And I feel like, once again, that's a book that has showed up in my mental picture for years. And I mean, 15, 20 years, maybe. And it was always on this like, oh, I should read that. Oh, I should read that. And I remember thinking when I did read it, two things. It had always just kind of been floating out there. Whatever, I was familiar with the book in terms of the work, meaning like I knew there was this book, and it was around, and a lot of the people that I listened to might say, like in Hill's Think and Grow Rich or something, and somehow it never got in my hands, which is just odd because I'm an avid reader. I don't know why. It just sort of was like, oh, I'll have to read that someday. I'll have to read that someday. Yeah. And then once again, the very time that I was supposed to read the book, and what I mean by that is when I finally read the book, I realized that I couldn't have read it in the years before and understood it in the way that I could understand it when I did read it. And so that's a really long answer to your question, but I don't know how else to say how I got connected with Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect answer, because that's how I got connected with it too. It was just, The Secret was my portal to everything. Okay. So The Secret in 2006 was how I got connected with all of this personal value. Actually, I did the Landmark Forum in 2003, and that was when I hired my first coach. Became a coach in 2005. So I was out there in the middle of nowhere. Like you, I didn't know that I couldn't. And so I just became an accidental entrepreneur and sort of find myself fighting it a lot of times when I think back to the days that I could have had a pension and a 401k, and I could have, stayed with something and been in a different financial situation right now, but it wouldn't be the right thing for me as I hear it for you.
Right.
So Think and Grow Rich led to then Outwitting the Devil, which we've both read 2 versions of it, one that was edited, and now in 2021, the original unedited complete text was published. And so you and I have both said this is one of our most significant studies. Why would you say that's how you would define that right now, Outwitting the Devil?
Because it's a culmination of everything else. In my opinion, there's textures of the core message of Outwitting the Devil. There's tastes and textures in a lot of different texts. And so my personal experience of it was there's this intellectual, like I said, taste, texture, maybe glimpse into certain things. And when I read Outwitting the Devil, it was just a very blunt, upfront, essentially, I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but in 2 sentences summary of the way the universe works. And it just took all of these taste, textures, glimpses, and that were sort of swirling in my brain like I knew, and was kind of starting to implement, and it just put it in 2 sentences and it just packaged the whole thing. And that is why I think, and for me to say that's one of my absolute all-time favorites is huge. I mean, I've read hundreds and hundreds of books, and it just went to, I would say, I could almost say a number 1 spot. The reason I hesitate is because I don't know if I can assign a number 1 spot, but it just went to the top ranking. Yeah.
So with all of that awareness, all of that listening to the calling, being aware of what your future is pulling you to, what is happening now for Amanda in the world? Your husband still has the excavating business. You're doing the entrepreneurial journey. Yes. Do you still have your nursing credentials?
I do. Yes.
So there's that. Do you still have your real estate license?
I do.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So what's next for Amanda now?
Wow. Jody, could you ask my guides? Because I would love for them to chime in right about now. Well, my heart is in spiritual awareness, and the challenge in articulating that into any one tidy form is that everything is spiritual. And so that means that I don't have a defined framework for exactly what it looks like, and meaning everything is spiritual. Everything is spiritual. You asked me, how did you connect with Napoleon Hill? And I have to give you a spiritual answer. And now I constantly say this, right? This is, to me, spirituality is that essence and connection and presence and the consciousness that we are, and all of the things that factor into our personal unfolding. So in asking me what is next, I have such a heart for people to see that it's all connected, such a heart to see that the unfolding is perfect because that's how it unfolded. And I love you're someone who speaks to that a lot. And even at your event in Fargo, you said the event was kind of closing up, and I may not be quoting this just right, but essentially you said everyone that was supposed to be in the room was in the room. Everything that was supposed to happen here has happened. And it is all ended now. And it went exactly like it was supposed to, because that's the way it went. And that to me is so beautiful. That really sums it up. And so I really have this passion for help, wanting people to understand it's unfolding, that there's an old paradigm that served its place and in a sense had value. And this is not to devalue anything, but it was really a picture of like, there's this bar, and we're all just falling short. We're just falling short. We're falling short. And we're so pathetic and we are so worthless. And someone has just got to come in and they're just going to have to fill that gap for us, because there is just no way that we can ever meet that bar, which just leaves you then fundamentally at a spiritual level feeling not enough. You're already programmed to believe it. After all, this whole thing happened because you weren't enough.
Right.
And so my heart is really for flipping that and saying, the sky is the limit, and there's this natural order of things, and you're the boss. And the more you align yourself with essentially the order of things, the more heavenly experience you can have. The more you stay out of alignment with these things and you stay outside of the natural order of things, it's kind of a hellish experience, right? In terms of, if we're really out of alignment with the way our body works, we experience fatigue, sickness, lack of creativity, all those things, which is really kind of a hellish experience. But when our body is strong and thriving and our mind is healthy and we feel a lot of creative energy, it's a more heavenly experience, right? And it's just, and we're just ordering with the natural order of things, and something as simple as how our body works. When we sleep 8 hours versus skimping on sleep, there's a real natural order to that. And so there's actually tons of biochemistry that I could go into behind that, of how human growth hormone works and how our appetite is regulated and all these things. So actually just sleeping 8 hours actually then becomes the key to the weight loss, to the creative thinking. So now I've got a healthier mind, in this case, healthier body and healthier mind, and not by extra effort on my part, but by leveraging my sleep. When I have a healthier mind and I'm thinking more sharply, I'm more valued at work, I'm more contributing to the overall purpose. So now I'm more contributory. When I'm more contributory, I feel more confident. When I'm more confident, I'm willing to speak up, which then brings in that spiritual truth of, he who can be trusted with little can be trusted with much. If I start showing up strong in these little things, then bigger opportunities come to me. So now my career path is just a natural byproduct of leveraging my sleep, which is just in alignment with the natural order of my body. This isn't extra. So now I'm losing weight, I'm feeling better, I'm getting promoted at work, and I'm not extra efforting.
Right, right.
And so of course you could hear in my voice, I could probably just keep going, example, example, example. And so when I just realized that, see, now I'm not falling short of a bar. Now, if I'm doing C work, like if I'm like a 70% in something and I'm happy with that 70%, like, hey, a lot of times I use the example of weight a lot because it's just so easy to, it's very measurable. And then, but more profoundly, people really feel personal. They really feel something. It can be very sensitive or whatever it might be. There feels like something personal connection to that kind of an analogy. So for example, people will go on a diet, and I don't like that word, but semantics aside, and they'll say, it's Wednesday and it's Wednesday night and they've had it. They started this new diet on Monday and they've had it. And Wednesday night, they eat a bowl of ice cream. And then they say, you know what, this is what I always do. I always do this. I go like 3 days and I'm good. And then I just blow it. And okay, I reframe that conversation because that is ridiculous to me. I'll say, did you eat 3 times on Monday? Yep. Breakfast, lunch, and supper. Okay, as we say in the Midwest, supper.
We do supper.
I would say dinner, but in the Midwest, that's lunch.
Right, exactly.
So you ate 3 meals. You ate this breakfast, lunch, and supper in Midwest language. And then Tuesday, you got up and you ate breakfast, lunch, and supper. And then Wednesday, you ate breakfast, lunch, and supper. And then by Wednesday night, you'd had it and you want that bowl of ice cream. And now this is what I always do. I just blow it. Okay, but you just told me that 9 out of the 10 things that you ate were good for you. So you're getting a 90% in nutrition, and you are coming in here and telling me how awful you are. If your child went to school for 3 months and got nothing but straight A's, and they did bad on 1 piece of homework, would you say to them, you always do this? Why don't you just quit school? I don't know why you even try. Do you see how ridiculous you are? You're going to be like this forever. You're going to think like an 8th grader for the rest of your life. This is what you're doomed to. I mean, hear the harshness in my voice.
Yeah.
We would never do that. And so when you flip that, and if I'm working with somebody, and food is spiritual, so it often comes up, and weight is spiritual, and that's a conversation too, meaning weight is something we do as emotional safety. It's not nearly as transactional as the world would like you to think. This many calories in, this many calories out. That's fine. Let's have that conversation when my heart is breaking and I'm eating. Okay. Because this is not a transactional experience. It's an emotional, spiritual experience, my relationship with food. And so when I say that, if you're like, between the kids, this, my work hours, this, I've got this new puppy, the floors need to be vacuumed, whatever that looks like. And you're telling me that 5 out of the 10 things you put in your mouth are actually good for you. That is freaking fantastic. That is so good. The fact that you can even get 5 healthy things in the midst of everything that you're dealing with, plus the emotional things that have you reaching for that anyway. I don't care what you weigh. I love that you chose, Subway over McDonald's tonight. That is so freaking amazing. And so when you understand that, if you're like, if I go from eating no vegetables in my diet at all to I eat vegetables 3 times in a week. Okay. So now I'm eating 12 more servings of vegetables in a month. That's a 1,200% increase in my health.
Right.
So when I look at that, or if you say to me, listen, 5 out of 10 things, like if we looked and we wrote down what you ate and 5 out of them are kind of decent and 5 of them are kind of crap, but considering your schedule, if tomorrow you put in 7 things, you've just increased your health by 20%. Okay. That is amazing. And so when we start to look at everything, now I say I use weight because it's really easy to look at. When we look at it as the sky's the limit and I can be wherever I'm at and all I need to do is tweak some things if I so desire. And that's a whole other conversation, if I so desire. And I think this comes all the way back to outwitting the devil, because the concept is, are we looking at what we are looking to gain? And we're looking at, I could go forward 20%. Whatever amount of our brain that is consumed by what the 20% looks like I just want to improve this or improve that, that is parts of the brain that will actively engage for us. The parts that don't like or that want to lose weight is a horrible phrase, by the way. It's horrible. You can't lose because the universe doesn't speak in negatives. So to lose, now you're in a losing game. You can't lose weight, but you can gain energy. You cannot lose weight, but you can gain muscles. You cannot lose weight, but you can gain emotional stability. You cannot lose weight, but you can gain clarity of thought. And yes, those are related to food. That's back to the interrelatedness of everything. And so in outwitting the devil, spoiler alert, you outwit the hells of this existence by having a forward moving, not a lose weight, because since your brain can't hear lose, all it hears is weight. It will automatically attract you to everything that makes you gain weight. So this is why we have people say, I've tried for years, I can't lose weight. I've tried for years and I can't lose weight, because you cannot lose weight, because the brain didn't hear lose, but it did hear weight. And so now it will attract you to everything that is weight gaining. And that is the whole concept of outwitting the devil in a really long spiel. And,
you did great.
Yeah.
So what to just kind of sum up here, everything you have experienced in your story of you being, Western South Dakota, traditional blue collar upbringing, understanding things the way you were trained to understand them, recognizing that you could be a teacher or a nurse and you chose nurse, seeing that bureaucracy that you were inside of didn't feel right, but you didn't know exactly why. But then being open to the possibility that building this home with your husband was all about, we could actually do something that feeds our souls and actually goes against maybe this bureaucracy we've been trained to be in. You got your real estate license, you understood things now from a personal development that kind of put you on a different plane, even though you were sort of exploring it while you were a nurse. Now you're in this space where you are seeing, it feels like you're a cheerleader for human spirit. We got spirit. Yes, we do. We got spirit. How about you? We did that, right? We did that all the time in high school growing up. Yes. And now it feels like that's the path you're on to help people identify with their spirit.
I love that. Thank you. A cheerleader for spiritual growth. Yes. Yes. That's perfectly fitting.
So that's your title. That's your new title. And would you tell people if you're coaching now, right? Your coaching business is helping people do this. And this is what you do for your living, I guess.
Yeah.
Would you tell them how they can get a hold of you if they are interested in connecting with you?
Yeah, actually, for me, the best way is Facebook. That might make me a little archaic, but yeah, just Facebook Messenger. That is the best way. I'm really not the one out there on all the platforms because that doesn't feel super aligned with my spirit at this stage anyway. Maybe that's something I'll grow into, but I'm really just about that personal connection. And so Facebook Messenger, Facebook is where you can see my content, kind of see what I'm about, but then actually contacting me just through Messenger is the best way.
So if there's anything you've heard today that you would like more information about, I know personally that Amanda is a person who will hold that space for you, will love on you and give you the opportunity to start loving on yourself, because she decided on Thursday to come to Fargo. I got to tell you this. And she drove and went in the ditch and there's a whole other story to tell you about that, but made it to our event, our chill out event in Fargo, where I can vouch for the spirit she is and the energy she exudes. We met on Zoom. We met virtually the first time. We have a great group that has met virtually, and there's a whole other conversation to be had about energy being non-geographic.
Yeah.
Zoom could be, we could tell ourselves we're zoomed out and we hate virtual, we want to be in person. Yes. Okay. And I will tell you that you can build some amazing relationships virtually. And when you get to be in person with people, it's doubly, triply, quadruply as amazing. So I'm grateful to know you for so many reasons and so many connections. And I look forward to what the universe has in store for both of us as we go forward. So thank you for being on Circle Up and Get Real.
Thank you, Jody. And thank you so much for holding the space that you do. You're phenomenal at it. And I can vouch when I was in Fargo and you were hosting the event. For those that don't really know, I'm sure Jody's been talking about the event, but it was people from all over the country. And there was 50 of us in the room. And so Jody couldn't be with all of us at once. So there was a lot of cohort and conversation over dinner and drinks and things like that. But the conversation always came back to Jody's ability to hold space, to build community, to bring people together, and just being awesome at that. So I thank you just for being you and facilitating.
Thank you so much. Thanks for trusting my vision. And everybody here, please reach out to Amanda if there's something you've heard that you would like more information and inspiration about. And as always, everybody, get real. Talk to you again. Bye-bye. So let me stop. I can't remember how to stop. Stop recording.